To win a world championship on a very basic level, you need three things: the right car, the right driver, and the right team. Although there's definitely been faults on all three at some point so far in 2022, it's very glaring that the majority of the pressure has been on the team and Matteo Benotto. Here's the thing about Benotto. Yes, he's made mistakes, but if he's not the right man, then who is? And how many more changes in team principle do Ferrari need to have? And also, if they do trust that Benotto is their man, how long can they wait if the team continues to underperform? I think it's very easy to jump on the bandwagon of throwing shade at Benotto and Ferrari, and don't get me wrong, I speak as a bit of a hypocrite because, like all of us, who doesn't love to make a joke or two when Ferrari are down? But outside of the jokes, I really do try and see it from the Benotto side because I understand that managing Ferrari is not like managing Red Bull or Mercedes, and then fighting for a title for Ferrari, that might be the hardest job in F1. Throughout the year, all three basic elements in terms of the car, driver, and team have all been at fault for losing points. I'll talk about the driver and car side a little bit later because the side that's caught the most flack has been the team in terms of the management of their drivers and also some of the strategical decisions that have been made as well. Naturally, that means that there is pressure on Benotto because as the team principal, you're the first person that people point to when the team underdelivers. The thing about Benotto is that I have been someone who's actually defended him in recent years because I feel like from where Ferrari started in 2019 and then that quick and sharp decline in 2020, I think he's actually done a really good job to not just bring Ferrari back to title contention in 2022, but also in building a different culture within the team. Benotto really started to shape his vision of Ferrari in the off-season between 2019 and 2020 with two big moves that showed the way in which Ferrari wanted to go. In 2019, Leclerc beat Vettel in just his very first season, and after their late season collision in Brazil, it was very obvious that if the tension was this bad after less than a year together, this was not a combination for the future. Ferrari made their intentions clear. Leclerc in December was given the longest contract in Ferrari's history until 2024, a contract which was then extended again until 2026, and although Seb wanted to stay at the team, they chose not to re-sign him and instead go with Carlos Sainz to make Ferrari's youngest ever driver lineup. Now, the way Benotto handled the Seb situation wasn't great because whilst the team said that the split was amicable, Seb said that he was straight up told that they didn't want him for 2021. Not wanting a driver is totally fair if you want to go in that direction, but there's definitely a better way of handling it than telling two different stories. Now, whilst I wasn't a fan of that, what I did respect is that Benotto had a vision and he didn't mess around before getting the drivers in that he wanted to take Ferrari forward. He was assertive, which is exactly what the team needed. He pinched a great driver from a direct rival, and ultimately in 2021, he was proven right. The team improved, finishing third in the Constructors, but it was specifically their driver lineup that gave them the edge over McLaren. It often now gets forgotten that McLaren were actually stronger than Ferrari in the first half of 2021. But whilst Ferrari's new driver Sainz hit the ground running, McLaren's new driver Ricciardo didn't. The point is that coming into this season and even after the first few races, it seemed like Benotto had delivered in returning Ferrari back to the top, and now they were ready to finally challenge for the title. But whilst Benotto seemed like he was assertive and on the front foot in the way in which he brought Ferrari back, the way in which the season has played out so far in 2022 is anything but assertive and on the front foot. Ferrari have been the team that always seems to be a step behind Red Bull in terms of strategy, and too often they're relying too much on the pace advantage of their car and the overtaking ability of Leclerc to get the job done and mask any cracks. Even in terms of their pit stops, Ferrari are not as quick or efficient as Red Bull, so in a sense from the very beginning, they're always losing a tenth or two before they've even made a decision. Also, whether this is an intrinsic issue with the way in which the team is working, or whether it shows that the driver-team relationship isn't yet where it needs to be, mistakes like in Silverstone where Leclerc was left out on old tyres, and Hungary where Leclerc was put on the not favourable hard tyres, it just shows that there is some kind of disconnect where either the drivers don't have enough input into the strategy mid-race, or the team don't utilise the driver's input enough to gather all of the data that they need to make their best strategical decision. The thing is, all of these issues, they can happen. Fighting for a title brings about a different level of pressure, and every decision you make is scrutinized and analyzed even more. Mistakes happen and it's fine as long as you learn from them, but what's been worrying is the fact that Benotto doesn't feel that Ferrari, after all of their mistakes, need to change whatsoever. After Hungary, he said, "It's not a matter of bad luck, and there is nothing to change as well. It's always a matter of continuous learning and building experience, building skills. Certainly, there is something that you need to look at and understand why, but if I look again at the balance of the first half of the season, there is no reason why we should change." That statement worries me, I am not gonna lie, because it's weird. He seems to understand and acknowledge the importance of learning and building experience, and then in the same breath, he says that the team have nothing to learn and nothing to change going forward. I hate to be all cringy, but what did Einstein say the definition of insanity was? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Benotto has been very careful and obvious in trying to not pin the blame on any one person at Ferrari specifically, and that in itself is not a bad thing because that shows the shift in Ferrari culture that he's created from where they were 10 or 15 years ago where there was always a need for a scapegoat somewhere, to a culture now where he's clearly protecting his team and isn't scared to take the criticism himself by defending them from the fans or media. I understand standing up for your people and protecting them, but inside, although there's no need to be calling out for people's jobs, you can't look at the first half of the season and seriously say that there's nothing that needs to change in terms of communication with the drivers, or even the way in which they gather the necessary data which could help them make better educated calls. He's almost tipped the scale of a no-blame culture too far into that not even admitting that the team can even make a mistake. Another problem is also the drivers. Charles Leclerc, in terms of his raw pace and some of his on-track moments, has literally taken my breath away at points this season. He's truly magic to watch. But the one thing that he doesn't have yet in his locker is that 360-degree view of the race and to on the fly disagree and take charge of the strategy. It's something that we've seen from Lewis Hamilton countless times, and even a Fernando Alonso, drivers who have this innate ability to know exactly what's going on in the race and can think on that 3D level despite just driving their own races. Leclerc doesn't yet have that, and maybe it's just an experience thing. But what's ironic is that Carlos Sainz actually does. But Sainz doesn't have Leclerc's raw pace, which is the one thing that you just can't teach. Leclerc wants to back and trust his team 100% because although disagreeing with your team and taking strategy into your own hands looks great when it works, if it doesn't work, that is a very dangerous and very slippery slope if your team feels like their own driver can't trust or listen to them anymore. However, that's just a small thing that Leclerc perhaps can learn, because ultimately, it's the job of the team to make the driver as comfortable as possible and to not have to make those decisions. Benotto deserves time, and although it's a cheap thing to go to that he should be fired because someone else can do a much better job, firstly, who is that someone else? And secondly, that still leaves the team with a basic deficiency that will still hamstrung the next team principal. Benotto warrants more time, and maybe losing in 2022 is the pain that Ferrari need to go through to learn and come back stronger in 2023. But although Benotto says that nothing needs to change, that to me is not an option. If things stay the same, with nothing changing, and if those cracks continue to leak points and championships, well then, even despite how much support he might have, his time and his clock as the team principal will start ticking.